Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We are back continuing our discussion of the Sierra Madre and the lore surrounding the Dead Money DLC. We're just going to pick up right where we left off. I appreciate you coming back to continue. Let's begin. However, I wouldn't be making a video like this if things just went perfectly for them. To start with the vending machines, there was actually a lot of contention over their use. While Frederick Sinclair himself said that this was an important part of the self-sufficiency, he placed a ban on a lot of outside items and outside vending machines and things like that. This made a lot of the lower level construction workers feel very angry. They felt that this was just a way to ensure that Frederick Sinclair got his money back, essentially. The vending machines working as a quote-unquote company store where they could spend their paychecks, which would eventually make their way back into Frederick Sinclair's pockets. Then this wasn't the only issue with the construction and the construction workers of the Sierra Madre. In order to meet the deadlines set by Sinclair himself, such as the gala event that he had planned for October 23rd, 2077, Sinclair would employ two separate companies to build the resort as well as the villa. The casino was built by M&M Construction, while the villa was managed by a company that had a far worse reputation and overseen by a man named Mr. Yesterday. Because of Sinclair's focus on the casino and the security of the casino, it left a lot of room for Mr. Yesterday to scam Sinclair out of a lot of money and provide him with a build that was not nearly up to standard. Mr. Yesterday was skipping safety measures and building procedures. Some people described the buildings themselves in the villa as sand barely held together with spit and glue. It was common for there to be accidents within the villa during the construction, buildings falling apart overnight. The money was also being horribly mismanaged by Mr. Yesterday. He would take the money and place it in separate accounts of his, as well as just completely misusing the funds. There's stories of stuff being shipped to the villa, like boxes and boxes of steak knives and explosives for the construction that were just left out in the open and completely unused. The other awful thing that was done is that to prevent people from being able to sue the Sierra Madre for the awful construction conditions and things like that, or if they got hurt on the job, medical records from the medical district were completely destroyed. These issues with the construction and the cheaper company being used by Sinclair were only multiplied by the shady work that the Big MT had been handing over. Sinclair went to the Big MT for most, if not all, of the technology that can be found within the Sierra Madre. Whether it's the holographic dealers in the casino, the holographic security, the vending machines, things like that, all of those come from the Big MT. Even the doors of the Sierra Madre were designed to hermetically seal in case of emergency, and the speakers were covered with protective material so they couldn't be vandalized. However, all of that advanced and wonderful technology doesn't come cheap. So it seems that Sinclair entered a deal with the Big MT, wherein they would be allowed to place certain devices, gather data, and perform small experiments within the casino and the villa in exchange for a cheaper price on all of this advanced technology. And to Sinclair, he viewed it as being worth it. If this meant being able to shield not only himself, but his beloved Vera Keys from the incoming apocalypse, he would do it. He would be totally fine compromising in order to get the best security that he possibly could. But Sinclair never knew the true extreme lengths of these experiments, such as the cloud. The cloud was something that came about from the Z43 innovative toxins plant that can be found within the Big MT. It was essentially a mixture of chemicals and toxins, and for whatever reason, the Big MT had decided to sort of flood it through certain ventilation systems within the villa. Their goal wasn't necessarily to kill people. I'm sure it was something along the lines of, how can this be used in a positive way? Because they have their weird spins like that. Or maybe it had something to do with the efficiency of the ventilation, or maybe even how can small dosages affect people or not. It could be any number of things. But the point is, it was being fed through the ventilation systems within the villa. Due to the practices of Mr. Yesterday, the ventilation system completely broke down within the villa. This caused an extreme backup and began the leaking of the awful toxic red gas that would become the cloud. Workers in the immediate area began choking and vomiting, and it was essentially near instant death when they came in contact with it. Upon learning about this, Sinclair went back to the Big MT and negotiated for another piece of technology, essentially saying, look, if you're going to provide me with these problems, I need a way to at least deal with it. You can keep your experiments, you can keep all that crap here, but I need a way to work around it. This is when the Big MT provided the dark light hazmat suits. Many of the workers considered them creepy and very unnerving, however, they did the job. The goal of these hazmat suits was to allow workers to work within the affected area and hopefully find a way to stop the cloud. They did eventually find the source, being the broken ventilation system. However, the dust from the cloud had essentially eroded parts of the metal on the suit, the locks that kept them in place. This exposed them to the cloud. They ran over to the medical facilities to try to get some sort of help and had to be cut out of their suits with steak knives, like the ones that I mentioned just lying around in those crates. And eventually, because of that discovery, the ventilation system was actually repaired to a base level functioning kind of, way. So, with the ventilation now fixed and the date of October 23rd, 2077 growing closer and closer, Sinclair was ready for the gala event. But so was Dean Domino and Vera Keyes. So to go back to Dean Domino, he was absolutely consumed by this hatred for Sinclair. His jealousy is something he couldn't overcome, simply because he found himself wondering, why the hell is this guy so happy? Why can't I be like that? Although he would never admit that. And he found himself trying to come up with ways to put Frederick Sinclair, quote unquote, in his place, to basically beat him down, to try to make him like the rest of us. What Domino didn't tell Sinclair about Vera is that he actually had a far deeper connection with her. If the tabloids are to be believed, they actually had some kind of affair. But his true motivation behind introducing her was not to help his friend out or anything like that. It was really to begin setting the seed, to begin planting the seeds of a major heist. His plan was to use Vera's close connection with Sinclair to gain access to the vault of the Sierra Madre, where Sinclair's treasure and so much more was laying. Because his ultimate goal was to take what he viewed as being most dear to Sinclair, and that would be his wealth, the thing that he had built this entire facility to protect. Vera initially agreed to do this plan. However, she got cold feet. She found herself actually caring for Sinclair and wanted to back out. However, Dean Domino wouldn't have it. In order to keep Vera on board, Dean Domino would go low, and he would blackmail her. With what exactly? Well, Vera had an addiction to Med-X and Super Stim Packs. He threatened Vera, saying that he would expose her to the world and expose her addictions, and it would ruin her very young and quickly rising career. But what Dean didn't know is that Vera had a terminal illness, and this addiction had formed because she was using these medications to dull the pain that she was dealing with daily, so she could continue to perform and act and face the public. I think it could also be argued that Dean did know about her issues and simply chose to blackmail her anyway, despite the fact that it was for something like a terminal illness. However, Vera eventually finally broke down and told Sinclair the truth. She revealed the whole plan, the whole reason they had met, and everything that was set up by Dean Domino. In a way, Dean Domino's heist succeeded. He said he wanted to take what Sinclair valued most, and he thought it was his money, when in reality it was actually Vera Keyes. And he had taken that from him by her revealing that none of it was real, that it was all a setup. It broke Sinclair. This led him down a dark path. He decided to set a trap for Vera and for Dean Domino. He didn't believe that she was genuinely upset about this whole thing. He thought maybe it was part of a larger plan. His trap was this. Once you open and enter the Sierra Madre's vault, you could never leave. His goal was to condemn these thieves, to say, there you go, you have everything you want. Now you're stuck here forever. Within this trap, he left a terminal entry for specifically her to basically explain his plan and why he trapped her and how betrayed he felt. However, it appears that they had another conversation and that Vera was able to finally come through to Sinclair, and he actually believed that she was sincerely apologetic and sincerely did not want to go through with this heist. This led to Sinclair going down into the vault once again in order to disarm the trap and replace the note he had left with a different one. The vault was actually meant to sort of shut down in order to protect Vera, who he thought might still go through with this plan, and that this emergency broadcast would go out in order to access any authorities, any military people who were still around, and free the real treasure of the Sierra Madre, which would be Vera. However, it appears that the whole facility was meant to be able to protect her, so while that idea is romantic, I kind of like to believe that he just went down there in order to disarm the trap. One thing he needed to do was access some electronics via the pipes. But due to a leak in the system and the clouds forming, he actually wound up dying in the process of trying to disarm the trap. And his remains can actually still be found in the pipes of the vault within the Sierra Madre. But there wasn't any time for an investigation. In fact, the time between Sinclair going to disarm the trap and the gala event was far closer than you would have thought. On the night of the grand opening of the Sierra Madre, people entered the casino and had a great time. That was until the war started. Those of you who are unfamiliar, I don't know why you're watching this video, but October 23rd, 2077 is the day that the nuclear bombs dropped within Fallout. It marked the beginning of the Great War. Due to flaws within the security system of the Sierra Madre, when the bombs fell, the facility locked down. The security holograms went haywire and began massacring the guests. The guests who were unable to bring in any outside devices. They had nothing to protect themselves. Vera was trapped in her room. She could do nothing but listen to the screams and the massacre that was going on just outside. There was nothing that she could have done in order to escape or anything. She was trapped within the Sierra Madre in some sort of twisted effort to protect her. Not knowing that Sinclair had died trying to save her, she called out to him, and the tragic thing is, her pleas were to simply let her go. She thought she was being punished by Sinclair, and she pleaded and pleaded and pleaded, and the recording system, the hologram system, recorded her every word, until she eventually took her own life using the chems that she had and scrawled the phrase, "let go," on the wall. Sinclair's inability to let go of her, to let go of his fortune, all of those things led to this very moment. Down in the villa, workers were able to survive for a short period of time using the vending machines and things like that. However, due to a mixture of the cloud becoming out of control and the radiation, workers within the hazmat suits wound up becoming fused with them, turning into what are now known as ghost people, some sort of cross between a ghoul and the chemical toxins found within the cloud. And for years, the Sierra Madre sat, undisturbed, protected by the cloud, actually. it would cause many of the travelers who were attracted by the emergency broadcast, which, due to money constraints, was actually sent out on regular generic airwaves and thus not taken seriously because it wasn't on an emergency broadcast. This led to travelers coming from far and wide attempting to find the treasures hidden within the Sierra Madre. Now you might be wondering, what happened to the heist? What happened to Dean Domino? Well, that is for you to discover in the DLC for Fallout New Vegas, Dead Money. But that is the background, that is the setup to this amazing DLC that I highly recommend you play. So what did you think of this lore deep dive video? I know I don't really do Fallout all that often, but it's a series I love so much that I just enjoy doing these videos. I feel like I could almost do it without a script just from how much I know. Thank you guys so much for watching this two-part. I know I don't really do two-part videos very often, but between Thanksgiving break as well as the overall length of this video, I just put out an hour-long video on Dispatch. So it's a lot of editing for a week, 2 weeks. So I appreciate you guys nonetheless. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, whatever.
Has your life taken a turn? Do troubles beset you? Has fortune left you behind? If so, the Sierra Madre Casino, in all its glory, is inviting you to begin again. So if life's worries have weighed you down, if you need an escape from your troubles, join us. Let go and leave the world behind at the Sierra Madre grand opening this October. We'll be waiting.